A lot of experience with Monsanto and their attempts to regulate and their control over proprietary seed. So please, yes, thank you.
Good. Mr. Parr, you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, based on personal experience or other fact-finding using credible and verifiable sources of information?
I do.
May proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. And you have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak before you. Thanks to Sarah for inviting me. I'm here because of 17 grandchildren, and I'm here for your grandchildren. I'm here for the planet. I have 8 children, 7 of who are graduates of Purdue University. One of them skipped off to IU, and she had to have her sister tell me about it. Too close?
A little too.
In February, I should say in 1983, after an attempt at farming, which I was not good at, I started up a business which I call custom seed cleaning. And I clean seed for farmers on the farm, mainly soybeans, but also wheat, oats, barley, canola, cranberry, which most people have never heard of. I clean sunflowers, buckwheat, timothy, and clover. So I can clean about any kind of seed that a farmer needs to do his farming. In 1983, when I started the business, I felt so comfortable that I had a business that was the perfect business. I worked about 100 days a year. The rest of the time, I was completely free. I worked about 40 days in the fall and about 60 days in the spring. And I made a good enough living at it, even though I only charged 40 cents a bushel for the services that I performed. It was very cheap compared to what the farmer would spend if he were to buy new seed. If I cleaned 1,000 bushels for a farmer today, I could make, I've raised my price since '83. That's almost 30 years ago. I've raised my price to $1.25 now, which is 3 times. Inflation is much more than 3 times what it was in '83. But anyway, if I clean 1,000 bushels for a farmer today, he saves $20,000 for my day's efforts. I make $1,000 or $1,200 for my day's effort. Pretty good income, you know. But it's a service that I never advertised it. 2 years, and then I was on my own. Never another advertisement. Word of mouth was all I needed. Well, in 1970, I was aware, because I was in the seed business in 1970, I was aware that was an attempt by companies to get rid of the infrastructure of seed distribution from the breeder to the farmer. The Morrill Act of the 1860s, signed by President Lincoln, when land-grant colleges came into being, and the land-grant colleges was to facilitate the development of new varieties of seed, and the infrastructure was put in place for that seed then to go from the researcher and the developer of new seed. That Morrill Act was to help set up the system of public university, what do they call it? Let's say the name of it now. Not the land-grant colleges, but the extension service, where you would actually get the information about the new seed out to the farmer, and also the infrastructure to get the new seed out to the farmer. That was being dismantled in 1970 for the multinationals to take it over. I wasn't aware that that's what the long-term plan was, but I fought it very hard when I was involved in Purdue Ag Alumni Seed Improvement Association's business. Anyway, I felt comfortable that I could help the farmers save money, and so I went about my business and tried very hard to grow the business quickly. At one time, I had 3 seed cleaners on the road. I had, my best year was 177,000 bushels of seed that I cleaned. That was in 1996, the year after Monsanto introduced genetically modified soybeans. I was concerned in 96 that because I was hearing rumors that the farmers had to sign agreements when they bought new seed, that they had to promise not to save that seed. And so I put a disclaimer on the back of the receipt that I gave to farmers. And that disclaimer said, as of the date this ticket was printed, the U.S. Congress, through the federal seed laws, has expressly protected the right of farmers to save grain that they have produced to use to seed the ground they own, lease, or rent. Certain seed/chemical companies attempt to circumvent those rights by requiring farmers to sign agreements giving up those rights in order to purchase new varieties of seed. And then I added custom seed cleaning, which is what I call the business. Custom seed cleaning is not a party to those agreements and will in no way hold itself responsible for enforcement of said agreements. And then I signed my name. I didn't have a lawyer draw it up. It was something I just did on my own because I did it kind of quickly, and I wanted to be sure that I kind of protected myself from any problems. Well, nice try. In February of 2007, a sheriff's deputy appeared at my front door. Of course, in February, you're not cleaning seed, it's too cold normally. And he handed me a stack of papers about 1.25 inches thick. And he said, "What is this?" He asked me, and I said, "I was kind of expecting it, and it's from Monsanto." And I explained a little bit what the deal was. He said, "Well, I've never given one out this thick." But anyway, after 14 months of telephone calls between Monsanto attorneys and my attorneys, they finally rushed me into court because they noticed that I really wasn't intimidated. I wasn't slowing down. I could care less about what they were saying because I wrote that disclaimer and I knew I was home free. April is the busiest part of my season. And on February the 24th, I was called into the federal court in South Bend, Indiana. And in the federal court, we got there, and my attorney and my wife and I, and Monsanto shows up with 4 attorneys. 2 from New Orleans, 1 from St. Louis, and 1 from Lafayette. The one from Lafayette was the guy that got him into the court in South Bend. Anyway, the bailiff came out and he said, "Well, the judge really didn't want to hear the case. You lawyers figure out what's going to happen. And when you make a decision on how you're going to do this, and the judge will sign it." So my wife and I go off into a little room with our attorney, and he comes back out to the courtroom and he negotiates. He brings in a piece of paper or a document, 21 pages long, and this is a court order that Monsanto has prepared for us to agree to and for the judge to sign. So in 15 minutes, my wife and I had an opportunity to zip through it real quickly and see what they had. I said, "Well, you know, there's nothing in there I can agree to." He said, "Well, I'll go out and talk to him about this last item here." And he said, "We'll see what we can work out." So he goes out, and a half hour later he comes back in and he said, "Well, Mo," he said, "they are going to let go of these 2 items, but the last 2 items on that one they want." And I can't buy that. He said, "Well, let me go out and talk to him about the next item." So he goes out, and a half hour later comes in, he says, "Well, they're not dropping any of that, but I can't talk about it." But now I'll go give him 6.5 hours later of this back and forth, back and forth. No breaks, but anyway, at 3:30 in the afternoon, he says, Mo, time out. We've got to talk. I need to explain to you a little more fully how this works. He said, if you want to have a trial, just the judge, it's called a bench trial. And he said, just you and I and your wife and the attorneys from Monsanto, and we testify, and he comes to a conclusion. But he said, if you want a jury trial, it's going to be more expensive. He said the bench trial is going to be close to $250,000. And he said a jury trial will probably be about $400,000 because Monsanto would call farmers from Evansville and Columbus and Terre Haute and Richmond and Kokomo and Fort Wayne and Valparaiso, and you know, they'll call in 400 farmers before they find 12 that they're satisfied with. And guess who gets to pay for all that travel? And if they got to stay over, that's on you. So he says, it's probably 400,000. But he said the nice thing is, Mo, you're going to win. He said, what's really nice is you'll win because you've broken no law. It's not against the law to clean seed. It's not against the law to save seed. It might be against the law to plant that seed. But you've broken no law, so you're going to win. Sad thing, Mo, is they don't care if you win because the next day they're going on to the next court. They're going on to the appeals court. And you see, you have an appeal, it's either going to be in Chicago or Detroit or Cleveland or Columbus or Cincinnati or Louisville or St. Louis. It's not going to be in Indianapolis. And he said, I don't practice in any of those venues, so he said, you're probably going to have to hire a new attorney, and you're going to have to bring him up to speed, and you're going to have to live in that city until this comes, you know, the case comes up. And he said, you're probably looking around $750,000. But he said, guess what? No, you're going to win. Because you've broken no law. It's a no-brainer. You're not going to lose this. The only problem is they're going on to the Supreme Court. And he said, if they go to the Supreme Court, the odds of you winning are between slim and none. And here's the reason, Mo. Every university in the United States that's doing any kind of genetic research is being funded by Monsanto, DuPont, Dow, Bayer, Syngenta. And he said, every one of those researchers are going to write a letter to the Supreme Court called an amicus brief that will request that the Supreme Court find in favor of Monsanto. Then he says there's another deal. He said most of the bureaucracy that is involved in the FDA, the EPA, the USDA, the Justice Department, Commerce, Education, when the Republicans get in, a certain group of executives go into the bureaucracy from those corporations. When the Democrats get in, a different set of executives go into that bureaucracy. It's back and forth, a revolving door. All of those guys will write, all of those women and men will write letters to the Supreme Court asking that they find in favor of Monsanto. And the trump card is, there's a former corporate attorney for Monsanto who now sits on the Supreme Court. And his name is Clarence Thomas.
That's right.
So your odds of winning in the Supreme Court, not saying you won't win, slim and none. Therefore, Mo, if you don't have $250,000 to start this fight, Monsanto gets everything they want. End of case. I mean, he could have saved 6.5 hours. But then he was charging me. So, when this suit was taking place, I was asked to come to Missouri to the Mark Twain State Park for a conference with farmers and state legislators from Missouri. The Derry Brownfield show was there, and people got up and gave their testimony. A farmer from Indiana came down and talked about being sued by Monsanto for cleaning Roundup Ready seed, which he had not done. Anyway, when I was getting ready to give my talk, a guy got up in the back and he said, this organization does not want to start a fight with Monsanto. We don't want to really cause any kind of a rift. What in the hell did I drive from Lafayette, Indiana to Central Missouri to not fight? You know, I don't have the same mantra that the Virgin Mary had when Gabriel appeared to her at the Immaculate Conception and announced that she was going to be the Mother of God. And she said, "Be it done unto me according to thy word." That is not my mantra. They had no idea when they sued a 75-year-old man. I have nothing to lose. I could care less, Monsanto, if I step on your toes. As a matter of fact, they used circumstantial evidence to convict me, if you can call it a conviction. They used the circumstantial evidence that I was cleaning seed for farmers in Indiana, and 90% of the soybeans sold in Indiana was genetically modified. Therefore, I must be cleaning Roundup Ready soybeans. Well, I could care less if I was or wasn't. To me, the farmer has the right to save his seed. The American people told the farmers in 1970, through their 430 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, their 100 senators, their president, Nixon, and 9 of the 9 judges of the Supreme Court confirmed the right of farmers to save seed. The Supreme Court confirmed the right of farmers to save their own seed. 4 months after Monsanto got their patent on Roundup Ready seed. They did not say, you can save your seed except for genetically modified, except for Roundup Ready, except for nothing. They did not make an exception. If they didn't make an exception, it's included. The farmer can save his own seed. What is the question? The American people said it. The Congress said it. The President said it. The Supreme Court said it. But the Patent Office didn't say it. I would like to use the same rationale that Monsanto used to go after me, the circumstantial evidence, to go after Monsanto. And here's my suggestion. When you look at the laws around the world that Monsanto has broken, in Indonesia, when they were told that when they were prohibited by the government from introducing BT cotton, they bribed $750,000. They bribed the Indonesian officials, and then they paid $1 million fine when they were discovered. But of course, they did not admit any guilt. They really weren't guilty. Who would pay $1 million if you're innocent? I don't think so. Okay, that's part of their modus operandi. In Brazil and Argentina, it was against the law. It was not authorized to have genetically modified soy in Paraguay and Bolivia and I don't know. Okay. Anyway, they broke the laws in every place around the world. The laws are made for us, not for them. And essentially what I'm suggesting is that we would like to have a private investigation of the asset profile of the people who sat on the board in the Patent Office, who made the decision to allow Monsanto to have a patent under the General Utility Patent Act. As their assets changed from before Monsanto got the patent and after they got the patent, I don't know if they does or didn't, but it'd be nice to know. I would like to suggest that maybe there was a difference in their asset profile. We have, my last comment. When I talked to the people in Missouri, and they said we shouldn't fight, I said, you know, we have all kinds of examples in this world of people who have showed us how to win these battles. And just to name a few of those people, we can start with Mahatma Gandhi. We can go on to Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Rachel Carson, Thomas Paine, Leon Trotsky. All kinds of people have showed us how to win these battles, folks. All we got to do is follow their example. We may have to suffer, but we're going to suffer anyway. You just got to name your poison. Which way do you want it? Thank you.
No questions from our advocate? Questions from the panel?
In your testimony, Monsanto seems to have a practice and very distinct strategies of intimidation and silencing. You're an example of this. Do you know of other strategies of intimidation and silence? Do you know other people who experience this?
Many of the farmers that I work for who have been accused of cleaning Roundup Ready seed, when the Monsanto investigators came to their farm or to their lawyer's office, they would get an agreement. These farmers would be allowed to pay a fine. In some, they kind of found out what the asset profile of the farmer was before they decided how much the fine was going to be. But the important thing was, after they determined the fine and the farmer agreed to it, he had to sign an agreement that says he would not discuss this with anyone. In other words, divide and conquer. Don't let the other people know what you settled for, because if we only took from you a small amount and the guy who's worth $1 million, we got a lot more, we can't let the two of you talk to each other.
Do you have, I realize this could be a long subject, but briefly, do you have insight as to why some of the farmers sign these agreements to relinquish their right to retain their seed in the first place? And do you know if some of them have come to regret that?
Well, I know that many of them have come to regret it because they had no idea how deep into the clutches of Monsanto they would be. Because they are essentially now captive totally. Monsanto doesn't have to own the farms, they own the farm. They essentially dictate to the farmer what he can do and what he can't do. And at some point, we will have the government or the corporate government telling us what crops we can raise, how many acres we can raise, what price we will get for them. We're essentially owned by the farmer now is owned by the corporation or the government.
Lord serve.
Yeah, we're essentially serfs. We're right back to serfdom.
Well, on that optimistic note, I thank you. And would you please call your next witness? I believe we're at final witness.
I just want to say thank you, Maurice Parr, for coming so far.